Welcome to the woods, or at least welcome to the cabin. This is going to be a reply video. A reply to a reply, actually. I watched one of Morgoth's recent uploads, and actually it was an older video he'd done on a TV series called Whatever Happened to the Likely Lads. And I remember when he first did the video, I remember watching it and remembering watching the series. And in that he was discussing nostalgia and how the two characters in it look back on how things used to be. And I commented on the video when he uploaded it recently. And he replied, and he said, "Isn't it weird how it's the mundane that becomes nostalgia?" And I had to think about that. And as I looked back to those things I feel nostalgia for, I realised he was right. That it's not those important dates in your past, or at least not in mine, those special occasions, your 18th birthday party, the day you passed your driving test, the first time you flew on an aeroplane. It wasn't those things I looked back and felt nostalgia for. So what was it? Well, when I was 5, I went to live with my father's mum and dad, with me nan and granddad. My dad was working full time. My mum was in hospital, a difficult pregnancy, having my younger sister. So I went to live with me nan and granddad. And I vividly remember things from that time. I remember looking out of the bedroom window at the back garden and what was beyond the back garden, and the sun shining through the window and feeling the warmth of that sun on my face. I can even remember the texture of the sofa bed I was stood on looking out of that window. And I remember going to bingo once a week with me nan and granddad and being bought a bottle of Coke and a packet of crisps and sit on the chair and don't make too much fuss. And I remember once a week I was given the shopping basket and a note, a shopping list, and a little purse of money. And I would walk down the road to the little local shop, give the note to the shopkeeper, who would then fill the basket, probably 20 cigarettes for me granddad in there. I would give him the little purse of money. He would take out what was needed for the shopping, and any change that was left over I was allowed to spend on sweets. And I would pick probably 10 pence worth, 20 halfpenny sweets through the glass of the sweet container. And he'd put those in a little paper bag, a little white paper bag. And I would take those and put those in the basket with the rest of the shopping, and I was a pretty happy little kid. And as much as the sweets were great, what was even better was outside that shop, outside the doorway, was a little roof. And the roof was supported by 2 black metal poles. And if I put the shopping basket down, I could run at those poles and grab hold of one and swing round and round and round. And I wasn't allowed to do that when I was with me nan. She would have a fit. But when I was on my own, I could do that. And I enjoyed it. And I remember it to this day. And I would do that for 5-10 minutes. And then walk back to my nan's house with the shopping. And I remember the feeling of pride, really, that I was trusted, that I was big enough to go down the shops on my own. the little things. And I remember when I was older, Sunday dinners at the family home. The kitchen would be full of steam and the smell of meat and vegetables cooking. My mum would be in the kitchen, my dad would be butting in trying to tell her how to do something, and she'd be telling him to piss off out the kitchen, otherwise he'd be cooking it himself. The radio would be on in the dining room, playing hits from the 60s. It used to be on every Sunday lunchtime. It wasn't always from the 60s, it sort of progressed. I think what it did was play music from 20 years ago, some more nostalgia. For my parents, it would have been music from when they were teenagers. And eventually we'd be called to the table, and we'd all sit round, my father, my mother, my brother, my sister and me. And Mum would bring all the Sunday dinners in, put them down, and we'd sit around that table and we would eat the food, and we'd laugh and we'd joke and we'd talk, and we'd listen to the music. This was an everyday occurrence. Well, not every day, but that happened every week. But that's something I feel nostalgia for. And as I became a teenager myself and started going out with my mates, I remember the youth clubs, playing pinball. Nothing special. There used to be a Saturday morning under 18s disco in town, and we would all walk down there and we'd go to this disco, and then lunchtime they'd kick out and we would walk all the way back through town together, laughing, joking. Go to the local chip shop, get a bag of chips each, maybe a pot of curry sauce to share. Just stand around the street corners eating chips and joking. I was just going to say great times, but there was nothing great about that. That was just everyday occurrence. These were the little things. This was the mundane. And those are the things I look back with a sense of sorry about the chicken. With a sense of nostalgia. Those little things. Noisy bugger, isn't he? And I feel nostalgia for the youth culture I was part of. You see, the British are very good at this subculture, this youth culture thing. You think back to the 50s with the Teddy Boys, and then in the 60s you had the mods and the rockers. And then into the 70s where you had punk, skinheads. I'm not going to say hippies because, to be honest, that wasn't a British thing. It was one of the only ones imported from some other country. And then into the 80s, you had the mod revival. Again, more nostalgia. You had the skinhead revival. You still had the tail end of the punks. You had rude boys. All these different cultures that kids were involved in. A sense of belonging. A sense of culture. And that seems to have changed. I think the last real authentic youth culture I can think of would have been the rave scene, the free party scene in the 90s. But since then, I don't think there's been an authentic youth culture, no rebellion left. So I look back on those times with nostalgia. And it is the little things, it's the mundane things. And I thought, well, maybe that's just because they were at a point in time in my life, a time that's gone. And that's certainly part of it. But if you look at the things I've just mentioned, it's not just that they've disappeared from my life as I got older, but they have disappeared. My grandparents felt secure and safe enough in their community that they would give a 5-year-old a purse of money and send him 1/4 mile down the road on his own to do the shopping. We lived in a high trust society. Everyone down that road knew my grandparents and knew me. The shopkeeper knew my grandparents and knew me. And they felt safe enough and secure enough within that community to send a 5-year-old down the shops. Can you imagine that today? I don't think it would happen. So that period of time has gone, not just from my life, but completely. And those Sunday dinners round that table, well, that was a tradition that had been brought over from both families, both my father's and my mother's, where every Sunday the whole family would gather round the table and eat together. And I know a lot of you will say we still have a Sunday roast. And I know a lot of people do. But I also know a lot of families that don't sit round that table, that don't get together at the weekends, that one day. And maybe because the family isn't together. I would certainly say that it's not as common today as it used to be. So even that Sunday dinner seems to be disappearing. And I just said that youth culture, from the 50s onwards, there was always a rebellious teenage movement. But today, doesn't look that way. And these youth cultures have their own dress sense and their own music and their own bands. Whereas today, much the same as the high street and everything else, it's very bland. It's all the same. All the kids I see look the same. There's no difference between them. So the mundane, why would it be the mundane that we feel nostalgia for? Or why is it the mundane, those little things that actually are just everyday occurrences that I look back and feel nostalgia for? And I think the reason there is that it's those little things that are authentic. They're just real. They're the things that make life worth living. Authenticity. And I see things changing all the time. And I recently read 2 articles on Facebook's changing name to Meta and the metaverse. And I really can't think of anything more horrific. An online virtual reality life to be superimposed over reality, where you can meet your friends in a facsimile of a pub whilst sitting at home on your own. No authenticity whatsoever. So what are people going to feel nostalgic for in 20 years? When there is no authenticity left? Where everything they do is merely a facsimile sold to them of something that used to be. Anyway, you lot, have a good weekend. I'll speak to you soon.